Shalom, I am Dr. Ann Davis with Bible Interact, and I am having fun taking you to sites in Israel where the biblical stories come alive. Now, I've got an introduction here. You may know the story of David from the Bible, but walking in the land where these events took place allows you to experience in a very powerful way what was happening to David. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm taking you to the part of his life and his early life when Saul is trying to kill him. I'm going to take you to different sites in Israel. But we need to start where Saul first meets David, and that's the story of David and Goliath. So I'm taking you now to the ELA Valley, and this is in the hill country west, a little southwest of Jerusalem. And there's a valley that runs between two kind of hills. They're not big hills, but they're hills. And this is where the story of David and Goliath takes place. There's a little creek bed running down through this valley, and you can see the stones. And of course, David picked up a stone, put it in his slingshot, and killed Goliath. Now, there are two little hills here. The number 2 is where the Philistines were. They were up on top of the hill. The Israelites were up on the top of the other hill, across the valley from the other hill. And we read that Israel and the Philistines drew up in battle array, army against army. So in order to fight, they had to come down into the flats. Before that, they would taunt each other. They would, call back, oh, your army can't beat our army. Our army is the bigger one. They'll kind of taunt each other by yelling. But to actually fight, they had to go down into the valley. We read the champion of the Philistines from, now in English we say Gath, the Hebrew is Gat, named, and again Goliath we say in English, but Goliath is the Hebrew. So the champion from the Philistines from Gat, named Goliath, was coming up from the army of the Philistines. So they were probably down in the valley, kind of getting ready to fight each other, the two lines of battle. And in comes this giant. And then what happens? We see here, when all the men of Israel saw the man, they fled from him and were greatly afraid. Well, they would have fled back up onto the hill because they were safe up there on the hill. And this is, of course, the story of where David beats Goliath, and that's where if Samson first recognizes this David, and he brought David back to his, he had built a very small palace in his hometown, and he brought David back there to live with him in his palace. Now I want to show you here on the map where we are. Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. Hebrew is Binyamin, and I have it circled here. You see that? There's Benjamin. He ruled from Gibeah, where he built a small palace, and I, of course, put a little circle there. Benjamin's a very small territory, so I just put the circle in the middle. Today, the site is a tell. Now, I have never been there. It's in the Palestinian territory. That's a Palestinian village below and kind of going up the sides of the tell. I took this picture off of Google. But I wanted to show you, where Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin, and that's been excavated. That palace it was a fairly small palace, and that's where Saul took David to live with him in that palace. David's family was in the hill country of Judah, and I put another little circle in Judah. So you can see that between Judah and Benjamin, those two tribes were really threatened by the Philistines. The main enemy was the Philistines, and here they are down on the coast, and the people of Israel are hugging up in the hill country. Okay, now what's going to happen next? In time, David grew up, of course, and he was a warrior, and so Saul gave him men for a band of men to fight the Philistines. David went out wherever Saul sent him and prospered, and Saul sent him over the men of war. And it was pleasing in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. So this is where Saul is going to become begin to become very jealous of David because David is now getting the attention of all the people. When David returned from killing the Philistines, the women came out of all the cities of Israel singing and dancing. And what they're singing is, Saul has slain his thousands. Well, that sounds pretty good, but David has slain his 10,000s. So David is very successful fighting for Saul, and Saul becomes very jealous. Now, here's the point where Saul is going to start to try to kill David. There was an evil spirit of the Lord on Saul who tried to kill David with a spear, but David escaped to his house, and the house would have been in Gibeah there, near the palace of Saul. Then Michal let David down through a window. Now, she was his first wife. He had more than one. And he went out and fled and escaped. But where is he going to go? I mean, Saul has an army and he controls the hill country. Where is David going to go? Well, this is a wonderful story, by the way. David arose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. Now, Gath is one of the 5 Philistine cities. You can see on the map where the Philistines were. And let's see, Gibeah would have been here, just a little north of Jerusalem. And the Philistines here are the Philistines. They're hugging onto the coastal plain, and the Israelites are up in the hill country. Now, the Philistines had 5 walled cities, and in each one there was a lord. So there were 5 Philistine lords, and they controlled not only the city, but those little hamlet and villages around that walled city. So here's one of the Philistine cities here, Ekron. And in another little travel dialogue, I took you to Ekron, the archaeological site on the Tell, but down below was the kibbutz. Now, the archaeologists needed people to dig, so the people from the kibbutz came up and did the digging from the excavation. And when it was done, they asked for permission to take some of the artifacts, which they took down to the kibbutz, and they created what is called Philistine Street. And it's a wonderful place to go because you can get, and there are signs and so forth, you can get a real good sense of the Philistine culture. Now, there were other cities. Here's Ashdod, Ashkelon, and those are in Israel. Gaza, of course, is in Gaza Strip. It's controlled by the Philistines. There was excavation done there by Israel before they turned it over to the Palestinians, but now you can't go in. It's too dangerous to go in. Now we're going to go to the 5th city, which is Gath, and I've got the red dot so that you can see where we're going to go. And this was a walled Philistine city, and this is where David ran, and he came into the walled city of Gath, which was a Philistine city. And I'm going to take you now to that site. It's an archaeological site. It's a tell. It's controlled by Israel, and they've turned it into a park. There's a trail that goes up and around the whole site, and as you go, there are these signs that tell you the story of not the story of David that I'm telling you, but another time when Samuel's army was fighting the Philistines, and the Philistines stole the Ark of the Covenant, and that story is told when you go. You take this little trail up on the Israeli park site of Gath. It's a tell, and you can see some archaeological, some digging in stones and stuff that show you the city that was there. We have now the people in God are Philistines, and they're thinking, wait a minute, what are we doing with David? I mean, he had a band of men, and that they kept defeating us. And they say, is this not David, the king of the land? Well, he wasn't the king, but the fact that he was the one winning all the battles, they thought of him as the king. Did they not sing of this one as they danced? So the people were saying, we don't want David here. He's the enemy. We don't want him here. Now comes something that's really, really funny. I think it's funny. So what happened is David took these words to heart and greatly feared Achish, king of Gath. Now, he's going to pretend that he's insane, and people who are acting crazy, insane, In the ancient world, they thought the person was had an evil spirit in them, and that evil spirit could jump onto other people, could jump into the city, could really affect everything around that person. So that person was, it's like being a leper. You had to separate them. You couldn't have them around you. So David disguised his sanity before them and acted insanely in their hands. Can you just see him? He's pretending he's crazy. And he scribbled on the doors of the gate, and he let his saliva run down into his beard, and they thought he was crazy. So David escaped to the hill country of Judah because they let him go. They didn't want him anymore. Now he's got a problem. Where is he going to go? Wherever he goes in Israel territory, Saul's going to try to come and catch him and kill him. Well, it says that he departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And there's a cave there where people think this is probably the cave where he escaped to this cave. And he was sort of in the cave by himself. But then what happened is when his brothers and all his father's household heard of it, they went down to the cave, to Adullam, to the cave. And so now he's got his family around him. And the younger members of his family, of course, can stay with him and fight with him, but his parents were older, and he was going to have to do something to protect his parents. But first, what happens is we read that not only did his family come down, but everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him, and he became captain. Now, there were about 400 men with him. Now, we're going to read in a minute that Saul had 4,000. David now has 400. And in time, it's going to increase to 600, 800. But it's never going to be a very large number, although David's a very good captain and a very good leader. So let's take a look at what he's going to do with his parents. He had to find a place where his parents would be safe. He wasn't going to take them to the Philistines. That didn't work out very well. So David went to Mitzpah of Moab. And here you see Moab is on the other side of the Dead Sea, and it's not Israelite territory. The Moabites were not very friendly with the Israelites, but they weren't fighting at that time. So it was safe enough to bring his parents there. And he said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and my mother come and stay with you until I know what God will do for me." Now, the capital city of Moab at the time of Moses, anyway, was Dibon, and that site has been excavated. I've been there, and I'm going to take you there now. Okay, David was in the cave of Adullam. Now, I'm showing him going up, not to Jerusalem, because that was a walled city controlled by Canaanites. He had to go up near Jerusalem because that's the beginning of going down through the Wadi Kelt, which is a very kind of a steep canyon where you can go down to get to Jericho. And at Jericho, there's a ford where you can cross the river to get over to the other side. And from there, I'm going to take you to Dibon because that's an archaeological site that I'm going to take you to next. We see that Dibon was the capital of the ancient people of Moab, and the Moabites were often enemies of the people of Israel. But at the time of David, they were not fighting at that time, so it was safe to bring his parents to the king of Moab to say, please can I leave my parents here? They'll be safe with you. And of course, then he went back because he has to fight Saul. So here's the archaeological site of Dibon. And there's really not much there. I was kind of disappointed. It's in Jordan. The archaeological sites in Israel are very well maintained and there's a lot of work that's done on them so that you can visit and really see what happened. And you can see where the houses, sort of the foundations of the houses and foundations of, where the wells were. And if there was a palace, you can see where the palace was. But, and then they have, in Israel, they have signs that tell you what these things are. In Jordan, nothing. It had been excavated by some Israeli archaeologists, but when they left, it was just a pile of stones, and that's what it is today, which is unfortunate. There's something there, though, that I want to point out to you, and that is that when they were excavating, they found this stele, which is a vertical stone where writing had been embedded into the stone. The writing was the Phoenician script, which is very close to the ancient Hebrew script, and it was recorded at a time later than the story that we're looking at with David, when Israel had become a united kingdom, and then it split into two parts. The northern part, which still retained the name of Israel, was fighting the Moabites and actually brought the Moabites under their control. And then the Moabites rose up and pushed the Israelis out. And the Moabite stone is recording that the defeat of the Israelites and pushing them back into Israel and out of Moab. That stone, by the way, is in the Louvre Museum in Paris. If you go there, you might take a look at that stele, that Moab stele. Okay, now let's see. We're going to go back here. The next thing I want to take you to is the Ein Gedi Nature Reserve. Gedi is a spring. Now, Ein is spring, and Gedi is a goat. That's what it is, a spring of goats. Israel, of course, has made it into a nature reserve, which is wonderful. And what we read, the story of David here, when Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, behold, David and his men, of course, called mighty men, and his mighty men, is in the wilderness of Ein Gedi. So Saul is going to come with his 4,000 troops to try to catch David in Ein Gedi. So let's see. So we're going to travel. We're going to start in Jerusalem, and we're going to go down the coast of the Dead Sea, and we're going to go to the park of Ein Gedi. And then Saul took not 4,000. He took 3,000. Well, that's still a lot of men from all Israel, and went to seek David and his men. Now it's translated here, the rocks of the wild goats. They're not goats. I'm going to show you a picture of them in time. The state of Israel has brought them in to the Ein Gedi Nature Reserve, and they're protected in there, of course. And you can see them very often if you're hiking in there. So I'm going to let me show you the trail map. We're going to start right here where it says parking, and that's the visitor center where you start your hike, and there's information there, and they give you this trail map. And we're going to take this trail right here, and it's going to take us, it's following this, it's called a stream, a wonderful, wonderful stream to follow. It's going up because we're starting at that low level by the Dead Sea, and we're hiking up, but we're going beside this wonderful stream, and it's going to take us all the way to a waterfall where it says David Waterfall. Is going to take us there. So let me show you some pictures here. Well, this is the stream. You see the stream. The trail is over on the right side, and it's a well-marked trail. It's not asphalt or anything. It's just dirt, but it's well maintained, well marked, and easy to follow. Although it is going up, and so you find yourself huffing and puffing a little bit. And here's another picture of it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And as you go, if you're lucky, usually this trail is hiked a lot, so you don't see these wild, well, they're called goats in Scripture, but they're actually ibex. They're a form of goat, or I guess they're a form of antelope is what they are. And you have to get off into some of the other trails that aren't hiked as much to see these ibex. And here's a picture of them. They're beautiful animals, and their hooves are very pointed at the front, and they actually can walk right up the cliff face. I mean, they find little places in the cliff where they can put their hooves, and up they go, and it's really amazing to see them scramble up the face of a cliff. And now as we go on the trail that we're on, it's going to end up at this wonderful waterfall. The very first time I was in Israel, which was many, many years ago, I was with a group. I was not by myself. After that, I was happy to go by myself. But that first time I was with a group, and the leader of the group said, "This is where we're going to go, and be sure and wear a bathing suit under your clothes." So when we got, it's not very deep, and you can get into the pool, and it's just, you get hot hiking up that trail, and you get up to the waterfall, and it's just wonderful. So now there are cliffs on both sides of the stream, and in the cliffs are these caves. And so we have here, Saul came to the sheepfolds on the way where there was a cave, and he went in to relieve himself. He had to go to the bathroom. So he went in to relieve himself. Now, this part of the story is just absolutely wonderful. And if you know the story and you take this hike, it's just, this story comes alive for you. So Saul was up at the mouth of the cave, and he's doing his duty here. Of course, lifting his robe up so he could handle what he was doing. Now, David and his men were farther back in the cave, and his men said, well, let's kill Saul. And David says no, so he has a knife, and all he's going to do is he's going to cut off a piece of Saul's robe. Let me show you this. And then Saul came down, and David stands in the face of the cave, and he's shouting down to Saul and Saul's army, "Today you have seen with your own eyes that the Lord put you in my power there in the cave, King Saul. Some of my men said I should kill you, but I spared you. I said I won't raise my hand against my Lord, because he is the Lord's anointed." Now you notice two words, Lord. One is capitalized, and that's God. The other one simply means a ruler. So it's not capitalized. My Lord is referring to Saul, and the Lord is referring to God. Now, after that little event, by the way, there was a back entrance outside of the cave, and that's how David and his men escaped, because obviously Saul's going to come up in the cave and try to get him. But they escaped. So Saul went down to the wilderness of Zeif. Now let me show you. There's Jerusalem, so you know where you are. Hebron, and just south and up from that flat area is the wilderness of Zeif. And I've got a picture here, because what happens is that the rain, winds with moisture, hit the hill country and drop their water on the western slope, but then as it goes down, the eastern slope drops down into the Jordan River Valley. There's no rain left, and it looks like this. It's called the wilderness. So Saul had with him 3,000 chosen men of Israel, and they were all searching for David. Now comes an interesting story here, because what we see in 1 Samuel 26, 7-12, Saul is sleeping at night. Saul is sleeping with his men. He's got 3,000, and they're all surrounding him in a circle, so he's in the middle to protect Saul. David came at night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping inside the circle of the camp with his spear stuck in the ground at his head. David said to Abishai, that's one of his great warriors, "We're going to go in, and we're going to sneak in to where Saul is, but don't destroy him. For who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be without guilt? Surely the Lord will strike him." So we don't take things into our own hands. We let God take care of it. We trust that God's going to handle it. So David took the spear and the jug of water from beside Saul's head, and they went away. But no one saw or knew, nor did any awake, for they were all asleep, because a sound sleep from the Lord had fallen on them. So that's a wonderful story. It came about afterwards that David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah?" And the Lord said to him, "Go to Hebron." Now here's Jerusalem, here's Hebron. It's in the Palestinian area, but you can visit it. It's a site where tourists will go. And what we see here is that I've been to Hebron twice. The first time I was with two Arab, they lived in East Jerusalem, but they were licensed by the state of Israel as Israeli guides. And they took me, and I said, "I want to go to the site, the original old city where David was." "Oh no, it's not there. Israel has some kind of the soldiers live there, and we can't go there." Well, the second time I went, I met with some of the Jews who live there in Hebron, and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll take you to the site." And here's a picture of the site. You have to walk up. It's on a tell site, and it's up, and the Palestinians have built homes on the side of the tell. So the road goes up through the Palestinian homes, and eventually you come up to the archaeological site, and that's where David would have lived when he was first king. Now you probably know Hebron because of the tomb of the Patriarchs, and there's a Jewish community that lives there, and Israeli soldiers who protect them. And if you go to Hebron, you'll go here to the tomb of the Patriarchs, but be sure and go to the archaeological site as well. Now, Saul was killed in battle along with his son Jonathan. And at that time, David brought up his men who were with him, each with his household, and they lived in the cities of Hebron. So Hebron was a walled city, but then there were villages outside of Hebron. And then the men of Judah came, and there anointed David king over the house of Judah. And he was in 6 years in Hebron, ruling as king for 6 years in Hebron. Then he went to Jerusalem, where he conquered the Canaanite city of Jerusalem and made that the capital of what became a united kingdom. Saul never did unite the tribes. David was the one who first began to unite the tribes, and then under his son Solomon, the tribes were really united into a united kingdom of Israel. But it didn't last very long, because after Solomon died, then the united kingdom broke into two parts. The northern kingdom, with its capital at Samaria, still kept the name Israel. The southern kingdom, with the capital at Jerusalem, was called Judah. So this is the story of David and how he fled from Saul, who was trying to kill him. And it's really kind of fun to see, to go to these sites, and so you can kind of live the story as you go to these sites. With that, I will wish you shalom.